Every life has a story, and every story is worth sharing. Your story, my story, and our story speak of victory and defeat, joy and sorrow, resilience and vulnerability. They are not just our story, they are Christ's story in us. They are Kingdom Stories from Down Under.
In this world, there are people who simply care. Not only do they care, but they show that care by getting involved in the lives of many people, lifting them up and showing the life of Jesus and the love of Jesus in a real tangible way. Among this very small group of people in the world, I've had the honor to meet Carole Parsons, a lovely lady who just gives and gives and gives of her time, her life, into loving and caring for others. It's a privilege for me to have a Kingdom Stories from Down Under, Carole Parsons. Carole, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You know, when I met you at Churchlands and we journeyed together, I sensed a real and genuine concern for people, and you were so meticulous in making sure that everyone was looked after. You know, I haven't seen that. That is very rare. It's a gift, I think. I don't know. Is it a gift or is it something that you honed down over the years?
I actually think it's a pastoral gift that God has given to me.
Okay. Because it's way beyond the natural.
Yes,
you couldn't do this in the
No,
natural.
No, you couldn't.
So what gets you up in the morning and gets you motivated to do this?
The Lord.
Of course the Lord, but how does He do it for you?
Oh, I just get up in the morning and I just say, Lord, my day, you've given me another day. Please use me as you will. I have two hands, one heart to serve you. And whatever, comes my way this day, just let me be a light shining for you each day.
And obviously the people that you meet and the people that you care for are in quite difficult situations. There's a lot to carry with them. There's a lot of burden. There's a lot of, pain and suffering and financial crisis as well, and relationship issues. How do you maintain an attitude of caring, but also keeping above the water?
Don't really know how to answer that. I just trust the Lord to guide me and lead me.
Yeah.
Every step of the way. And that's what I say to him. Guide me, lead me every step of the way today so that I am obedient to what you want me to do.
Trust and obey.
Yes, trust and obey.
Oh, there's no other way.
That's right. Yes.
You know, that song has been going on in my ears all day, because last night at church we sang it.
Oh, right.
Because we were talking exactly about this, It's not negotiable. You got to just trust and obey, trust and obey.
Yeah. And I just I'm just passionate about serving Jesus.
Okay.
And I just love Jesus. He is my first love. And I am passionate about serving him in whatever way he wants me to. I just say, Lord, choose me, pick me. Yeah. If there's something to be done today, let me be the one.
Yeah.
To bring your kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven.
So it's living for the audience of one, really. So your ministry is unto the Lord more than it is unto the people.
Yes.
Okay, so that's why you can remain above the water, because it's not about the problem at hand. No, it's about honoring Jesus in that person.
That's right.
Okay.
In every situation, no matter, what the situation is.
So you've given away a secret here, a secret of the trade. When did you discover this call, this pastoral care call?
Probably when I came to Australia. Mm-hmm. I think I did not have the same opportunity when we lived in England, and I'd got Stephen, my son, to look after. Mm-hmm. As I say, or most people know that I was divorced. My first husband went off with another woman and left Stephen and I by ourselves, and I was determined to make sure that he had a good home.
Yes.
To be brought up into, that this was not going to affect him
Yes.
in any way. And so taking care of him was my first
Trigger.
yes.
Enough
So-
to understand that you have it.
Yes.
It's interesting that in one of the greatest pains and suffering of life, you discovered one of the most amazing gifts.
Yes, indeed.
No wonder
And-
we've got Romans 8:28 in there.
Yes, that's right.
That all things
All things
work
work together for good for those who love Jesus, yes, who love Christ. But in that time, I struggled
as you would.
with my husband leaving, and
How old were you? Late 20s, mid 20s?
no, I was just in my 30s
Okay.
when my husband left me, and I did struggle, mainly with feeling bitter towards him.
Yes.
And I had a beautiful auntie
Mm-hmm.
who took me under her wing,
Yes.
and she mentored me,
Okay.
and she taught me how to love the husband that deceived me.
She was a believer,
She was a believer,
strong in her faith,
very strong in her faith,
suffered a lot.
suffered a lot. Yes, she did.
Usually those who suffer the most
Yes,
love the most,
yes,
don't they?
She did suffer. She suffered. She was not a well person.
Yeah.
And
But she got something right.
But oh, absolutely. And she talked to me so many times. Every time I went down to see her, she would talk to me about forgiving my ex-husband
Yeah.
for what he'd done.
Yes.
Because Jesus forgives us.
Yes.
When we say we are sorry to Jesus,
Yes.
he forgives us.
Yeah.
And we have to learn to forgive others.
Yes.
And I remember one time she said to me, the next time he comes to your house to pick Stephen up,
Yeah.
to take him out, open the door
Yeah.
and treat him as if he was your best friend. And I said, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I said, I can't do that. But I just prayed about it. And one day he actually came and he sat outside in the car
Yes.
and he peeped his horn for Stephen to go out.
Which normally would have made your blood just boil. Not
And
not
anyway-
even knock at the door, not even
That's
open.
right. Anyway, I didn't send Stephen out. I said, no, you're not going.
Wait.
I want your dad to come to the door
Yes.
and I want to speak to him.
Yes.
Anyway, eventually he stopped peeping the horn and he turned the engine off and came and knocked on the door, and I welcomed him and I asked him how he was and how he was going,
Yes.
and I did my best to be loving and kind towards him in
Yeah.
the words that I spoke to him.
Mm-hmm.
And from that day on,
A burden was
the
lifted.
burden was lifted, yes. And I learned to love him unconditionally,
Yeah.
as God loves me.
Did Steve see that?
Yes, he did.
What did it mean to him?
It meant a lot to him. I have a lovely son.
Mm.
I have a beautiful son. All right, our marriage didn't work,
Yes.
but I have the legacy of a beautiful son.
Praise God.
Yes.
That's amazing, because I mean, overcoming that would have been nice, even just, between you and your former husband, but for your son to see that, to see the love of God through his mum, that carves something in his heart that cannot be taken.
Well-
How old was he?
He was 10 when...
So, I'm sure he remembers that day.
Yes. I'm sure he does. I'm not quite sure how it affected him, but I mean, he's turned out to be a very loving son.
I'm sure it would have unlocked something in him. It would have released something in him as well.
Mm.
Isn't that so powerful? Because that inner struggle is just ours, really. It's not nobody else's.
No.
It's a fight that goes on in our mind, not so much in our heart. Because in our heart we know what we need to do. It's in the mind that
Yes.
the battle is.
Yes. Yes. Battle of the mind. Yes.
And when you do manage to bypass that, that nagging voice or that unfair,
Yes.
victimized
That's right.
mentality or whatever it is,
And feeling sorry for yourself
yeah,
because it's happened to you.
yeah.
Why has it happened to me? But all
Yeah.
those questions went.
And it just releases something powerful
Yes,
of
it does.
God in you.
Yes.
So obviously out of that position of forgiving, you also felt the forgiveness which was given to you.
Yes.
And from that forgiveness, even though that came first, you just had to acknowledge it and make yourself aware
Yes.
of that.
Yes.
And then that strengthened you to be able to love other people.
Yes.
And now when you release God's power, you release it from an identity of a forgiven person. So if you talk to somebody who's going through a difficult relationship and you tell them to love them, you really have the iceberg weight behind you. It's not just words.
Yes.
You have the mantle, you have the experience, you have the expertise.
Yes.
In fact, you have
To
the
say it.
suffering,
Yes.
which has transformed you. So where did you grow up?
I excuse me. I grew up in a little town in England,
Yeah, of course.
in Staffordshire, and
Okay.
the town that I lived in was on the border of Staffordshire and Cheshire,
Okay.
and it was just a small town, just a small community,
Yeah.
and I grew up with one sister who was 11 years older than me.
Big gap, similar to Jeff.
Big cap, yes. And then 3 brothers
Smaller.
after my sister,
Oh, okay.
and then me,
All right.
and then another brother
So 5 of
after
you.
me. So there were 6 of us
6
all together.
Oh, yeah.
So 6,
Wow.
yeah,
That's
5
beautiful.
siblings. Yes.
So we were 7, so I love your family.
Yes, yes.
Were you a bit of a tomboy or?
I was very
Because
much
with
because
3,
I
but-
was in the middle
Yeah,
of all the
yeah.
boys. Yes.
Which is not always bad because you probably got a lot done.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Whatever they did, I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And your parents, what was life for you at
My
home?
parents were beautiful. They were godly parents. I had
Okay.
godly parents. I was
So you grew up in a Christian
brought up in
house.
a Christian household, and my grandparents, both sets from my father's side and from my mother's side, they were both. They
Bible
were
believing.
they were godly people.
Wonderful.
Yes. Yes, churchgoers from way back. Yes.
So what church did you go to? Church of England or
Church of
Anglican?
England.
Church of England.
Church of England.
Okay.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Sunday school?
And Sunday school. Yes.
Yeah.
Went through Sunday school until I was old enough to start teaching Sunday school.
Okay, so you transitioned into that in your
Yes.
teenage years.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
What were you playing? What were you doing? Were you playing football with the boys or more?
Oh, I did. I played football and I played cricket and
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Wonderful.
And I went fishing with them.
Yeah.
Yes.
How were the teenage years in town?
Well, I left school when I was 15
Okay.
and I went to work in the post office.
Mhm.
And I was there for about 4 or 5 years,
Yeah.
and then I met my first husband.
Yes.
Right, I had a very nice friend whose name was also Carole.
Yeah.
Her name was Carole, and we used to go out together.
Yes.
And but both her parents and my parents were very strict, and we used to have to be home by 10 o'clock
Wonderful.
every night. Like
Yes.
if when we went out,
Yeah.
we must be home. Excuse me, by 10 o'clock. So I had quite a strict upbringing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is usually
Which was good.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Good
where
lady.
did you meet your husband?
Actually at a dance.
Uh-huh.
He was the drummer in the
Nice.
band.
In the band, okay.
Yes.
So
And,
he was beating really well. He was beating your drums.
he was beating the drums, yes. Whisked me off my feet at the time, but
Was he
yes.
Christian as well or not?
no.
And so that was a bit of a rebellion on your side.
It was, but
Your parents wouldn't have taken it too well.
they didn't.
No.
Especially my father. My father was not happy, really. But we got married anyway.
Yeah.
But he just knew that it wasn't right.
Hmm.
But the thing is, he never said anything to me. He said, he told my sister, he told my mother, but he never actually told me that he wasn't happy, that I was marrying,
Yeah.
my first husband.
That's interesting. Why do you think he held it?
I don't know.
Did he care too much or not enough? Or
Oh, I think he cared too much
yeah.
for me. Yes.
He didn't want to upset you, maybe?
Maybe, yes.
Or maybe he thought that you've already made up your mind and you won't change?
Well, could be that, yes. Because I was actually quite strong-willed
Yeah,
even at that age.
of course. Or sometimes you're stronger willed when you're younger.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I hear you, I'm thinking, I've got 2 daughters, maybe another one on the way, because we've got another child being
Yes.
born soon. And I'm thinking, what will happen when my teenage girls or, my early 20s girls will start going out with somebody that I don't agree with. And now you're telling me that I should say something, and I should say it early.
Yes,
And not allowed to grow too much, not allowed to go too deep.
yes.
Well, you can
Could
still
be.
save them.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it's interesting.
yes.
But for you at the time, it was the real thing.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
And for the first few years, I believe that we had a good marriage,
And it worked out well.
and it worked out well.
But not a lot of God.
Not for him.
And
for me.
but you were still going to church.
I was still going to
and
church.
he didn't mind that?
No, he didn't mind that.
Was he into drinking, gambling,
No.
or anything like that? No.
No.
He was a good man.
No, he as far as I know, he didn't drink. He didn't go out drinking
Yeah.
or anything. But of course, he was in a band,
Mhm.
and he was a salesman,
Yes.
and so he was away a lot
I
for
see.
quite few days at a time, sometimes a week
In the
at a
army
time.
or in the
No.
Navy or as a professional?
No, as a professional.
Yeah.
And in fact, he worked for a pottery company called
Delivering.
Wedgwood.
So they were going into the mainland.
So there were times when he went overseas, and he would be away for a period of times.
Yes.
But then when he was home at the weekends, he would be out playing in the band.
Okay.
And of course, once I had my son Stephen,
Yeah.
I didn't go with him anymore.
Yes.
And that's where
Temptation came.
that's where the temptation came. Yes. Yes. For him.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he probably had a weakness towards that.
Yes.
Maybe even before he met you.
Well, he may have done, but I didn't know
Sure.
of anything like that before.
So
I met him.
how did it hit you?
Oh,
How did
well,
you find out?
I found out one day when I came home from church
On a Sunday.
on Sunday with Stephen, and all of my husband's belongings and everything had gone, and a note on the table to say that he had left. And
He simply left.
just simply left, like that. But then
What was in the note?
to say that that he had met somebody else, and that that he was going to live with her. It was difficult. I haven't thought about these things for years and years.
Yes.
I don't think about them anymore. But then, about 2 weeks later, he rang me up and asked if he could come back. And I said yes. And I had him back.
Yes.
And things went okay for just a short while. And then another time I was out, and when I came back, his things had gone again. And another note saying he'd gone. He couldn't live without this person, and that was it. And so again, and at this time the first time he left, I hadn't told my parents or his parents.
Yes.
I'd kept it to myself. Stephen and I told Stephen not to say anything to anybody. And as I say, when he came back, but then the second time when he left, I went and I told my parents, and then I went down to his parents and I told them.
Yes.
And they were angry.
His parents
were very, very angry, and said they didn't know how he could do that to me and Stephen.
Yeah.
So there was a rift then between him and his parents, and that was it. Anyway, I think he rang me again. I think I had him back twice.
Yeah.
And then I just said to him, if you go again, that's the last time. I won't accept you back. I won't let you come back. Anyway, he did. He went again.
So he came back, stayed
so
again.
So he came back and stayed again. And then he went the third time. And the problem was that everybody around, my neighbours, knew and never said a word to me, because apparently when I'd been out, perhaps visiting my parents or his parents and that, he brought her home. So they knew what was going on.
Yeah.
But all of them were too scared, I think, to tell me that was going on. But then, as I say, after that, it all came out, and my neighbours came to me then and said, we've known this has been going on for some time.
Yes.
So that's when I got very close to this auntie, my Auntie Vera.
Mm-hmm.
And
she's from your mum's side? Or
she's from my mother's side. She was older than my mother.
Her sister?
Yes, my mother's sister. And she was such a lovely, lovely Christian, such a lovely, godly woman. But she suffered in her body. But she was so loving and kind.
Yes.
And she used to sit and talk to me about Jesus, and about how Jesus died for us, and how he would want me to forgive Rex, because he forgives me when I do anything wrong.
Yeah.
I used to go to church. I was a Christian. Yes, I believed in God, I believed in Jesus. But it wasn't until that time that I actually came to know Jesus as my personal saviour.
Mm.
And it was during that time that I realised that Jesus died for me.
Yes.
And he forgives me every time I do wrong. And sometimes I do things wrong deliberately. Sometimes it's unintentional.
Yes.
But it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
God forgives me.
Well,
and because he forgives me,
yes,
I should forgive others who sin against me.
So when you hear the word forgiveness, what does it say to you? Because to some people forgiveness is just such a broad term, you know, but to you obviously it has such a deep connotation.
A deep meaning, yes. Knowing that Christ died for me.
Yes.
And that I must, if I am to be Christ-like, then
yes.
I too have to forgive others as Christ has forgiven me.
To death.
And I endeavour to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was only through my the mentoring from my Auntie Vera that came about in my life, and that I really saw. She opened my eyes, or God opened my eyes through her.
To see Jesus.
To see Jesus in a way that I'd never seen him before.
When did you experience healing? While that was going on?
While that was going on, yes.
Was it years or months after?
It wasn't years. It was, but it was a good few months.
It was a process. It wasn't an event.
It was a process. No, it didn't just come.
No.
I battled with it.
Yeah.
I battled with forgiving. With forgiveness.
Yes.
Was trying to forgive him, and not to hold any bitterness against him. But then the breakthrough came, and I was able to. I was able to forgive him, and I was able to welcome him back into the house.
Yes.
Unconditionally.
Mm.
Yes.
Wow. And then you met Pastor Jeff.
I met Pastor Jeff.
How did you meet him?
He wasn't a pastor then.
No, he was just Jeff.
He was Jeff. He was my Jeff, yes.
Yeah.
We met at the place that I was working at.
At the post office? No.
No, I was not working at the post office then. After I didn't work while Stephen was growing up. While Stephen was a baby,
yes,
I brought him up.
Okay.
He didn't go to nursery school, childcare
no.
or anything.
Yeah, beautiful.
I brought him up. And
so when Rex left, did he leave town as well?
Oh, yes.
He left the family. Occasionally he would come up and pick Steve up, but that was it.
That was it, yes.
Okay.
And he never saw my parents, and he never saw his parents.
Oh, so he broke that relationship as well.
Yes.
Did he marry that lady that he went out with?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Yes, he did. But I don't think that it's been a happy marriage.
Well, it's the wrong foundation.
Yes. Anyway, when Stephen was 5 and went to school,
yes,
I started to look for a part-time job.
Yes.
There was no part-time jobs in the post office, on the post office counter where
yes.
I used to work. So I started looking elsewhere, and I saw a job advertised in a pottery company. And so I went to work...
Admin?
In admin, yes. I went into accounts.
Yes.
And I was working at this place when I'd been there quite some time.
Yes.
Before Jeff came to work.
Yes.
And he was made the factory manager.
Mm-hmm.
And by that time, his wife had left him.
Yes.
And he was living with his sister and brother-in-law at that time. And he asked me out, and I said no. And because I just felt that I just couldn't trust men anymore. I'd just been hurt too much, and I didn't.
Sure.
I was just afraid of being hurt again.
What was your stance at the time, that you will not go out again, that you'll not marry again?
Well, yes, I think I was thinking that I wouldn't I wouldn't ever marry again.
Yeah.
But then Jeff was persistent.
Yeah.
And he asked me out again. I think I said no twice, and then the third time I said yes, and we went out.
Where did he take you? Restaurant?
No, he took me to a little pub way out in the countryside in England.
Yes.
To a little pub called the Romping Donkey. And
I love this.
he bought me scampi and chips.
Okay.
And
What's a scampi?
Scampi is like prawn.
Okay.
Like prawn.
Yeah. Scampi, yeah.
And chips and a bit of lemon.
Nice.
I didn't drink.
No.
I only drank like a fizzy drink.
Sure.
And then after that, we were just friends. Then he asked me out again, and we went out another night to another pub, where we took the children, where we took his daughter and son, and my son.
Yes.
So it was a place where there was a room at the side where you could sit with children.
Yes.
And that. And so we started seeing one another.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. Yes. For a while.
How did you accept Jeff in your life? What made you, let go of the barricades?
I think because
What cracked the shell?
he was different. Certainly different than my ex-husband.
Yes.
And I think he just cared for me. He just showed so much care for me.
Do you think it's because he was hurt as well?
I think so. I think it probably was. Yes.
So you understood him, he understood you. There was a sense of mutual connection there.
Yes. Yes.
Because at that sort of age, it's not based on feelings. It's based on commitment. It's based on, facts. It's based on values. It's based on priorities.
Yes.
It's not passion as it would be as a teenager in the sense. Do you know what I mean?
No.
You were very grounded, and obviously because of the pain that you both went through, very cautious maybe as well.
Yes. Well, I think that was it. I was cautious. Yeah.
So what do you think really, got the deal across the line? Was it his caring or?
Possibly. But of course, when he asked me to marry him, I said no.
Again, 3 times?
3 times. I said no, I wouldn't marry him. No, he only asked me once, and I said no, I wouldn't marry him because he wasn't a Christian.
Yes.
And he said, well, I believe in God.
Yeah.
And I said, but you're not a Christian, you don't go to church.
Uh-huh.
And we actually partied for about 6 months.
Yeah.
And I never saw him or contacted him at all.
Yeah.
But then one day, and in between this time, I'd changed jobs. I'd left a place where we were working together.
Yeah.
And I'd got myself another job.
Did you leave it so you're not around him, or for other reasons? Did you leave the
no,
work?
I left the work for a better job.
Okay.
And better pay.
Yeah.
Because I was, I'd got Stephen.
Yeah, you need
and
it.
I was paying a mortgage.
Sure.
Because I took on the house.
Yeah.
And I'd got a mortgage to pay. And this job was advertised and it was paying better money.
Yeah.
And so I took it.
Yeah.
I got the job and so I took it. And so I was working at a different company then.
Yeah.
This is all the time that we weren't seeing one another.
Yeah. Did you see anyone else? Did anyone else knock at your door, at your heart? Apart from Pastor Jeff?
Yes, there were a couple of people.
Yeah.
But they were married, and I wouldn't have anything to do with them.
Wow.
And I said no. They were 2 married men
That's
who were
incredible,
working at this other place.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to have anything to do with them. I'd been hurt, and
Yeah.
I would never do that
Yeah.
to any other person.
Sure.
And so
You must have been really, really attractive. Pastor Jeff did confess once to me that the reason why he went for you was because he had a nice butt.
Oh, I know.
So
Tells that to everybody.
to
Yes.
him, it was a physical attraction. To
Yes.
you, it was more a caring,
Yes.
affectionate
Yes.
attraction. But to him, it
Yes.
was physical. So you must have turned some heads.
Yeah.
If even married men were after you.
Yes. But that was very much something that it just horrified me. That married men,
Yes.
were wanting to go out with other people.
It was quite disturbing, wasn't it?
It is disturbing.
Because you
very
were
disturbing.
hurt by exactly the same act.
thing. Yes. Yes.
And just to see it so easily,
Yes.
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 just joked around or just
Yes.
adopted,
Yes.
it would have,
Yes.
rang a big, alarm bell.
Yes.
So he did come back. He found you again.
No, it was me who found him.
Oh.
So the story is that this other place where I was working, somebody in the office was getting married,
Yes.
and like all places, they have a whip round and collect money
Yes.
to buy a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And someone said, "Oh, I know what we could get for this person. We could get them a crock pot, like a slow cooker."
Sure.
And Carole could get it from
Because she knows somebody.
Because she knows somebody
who works at the pottery.
At the pottery, who makes these crock pots. And I'm saying, no. And they're saying, yes, you could get it cheaper. And then we could spend some money and buy them something else as well.
Yeah.
So one Saturday morning,
Yeah.
I went over to where Jeff was at work.
Yes.
And because I knew that he worked on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
And because he was working a lot of hours.
Yeah.
I just went up and I saw him. He was. I went into the office and he was there, and I said, "May I ask a favour?" And he said, "What is it?" I said,
"You want to marry me?"
He said, "Can I buy a crock pot? Somebody's getting married in the office, and they've asked me if I could organise this slow cooker for them."
Yes.
So I said, would I be able to get one from you?
Yeah.
And he said yes. And so that was it. And
it's enough to break in the conversation again.
That's right. Anyway, as I was talking to him, I just felt that he didn't look very well, that he didn't look as though he was looking after himself very well. Because by this time, he'd got his own home. He'd bought a house by himself. He wasn't living with his sister.
Yes.
And I thought, he's not looking after himself.
Quite lonely.
Quite well. Don't know. Anyway, I went down because this office was up some set of stairs, and I got to the bottom of the stairs, and I thought, I don't know what made me. It must have been the Lord.
Yes.
And I turned round and I walked back up the stairs, and I just said to him, "Would you like to come for dinner tonight?" And he said, "I'd love to."
Yeah.
And so that was it. That was the catalyst
Yeah.
that broke the ice
The deal
for
breaker.
us to get back together again.
Mm.
Yes.
And then he asked you to marry him eventually?
He did.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, you're not a Christian. You're still not going to church." I said, if you started coming to church,
Yes.
now think about it. Anyway,
So he did.
He did.
He showed up on Sunday.
Started coming to church.
Okay.
and I took a risk. Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Because as he said many a time, I could have said yes and come with you to church and then got married and then not gone to church after that. But he didn't. He was faithful. He was
How
faithful.
did the children accept all this? Yours and his?
Yes, I think my son absolutely loves Jeff.
Okay.
Soccer mad.
Yes.
Stoke City mad.
Yes.
Okay. So they were the
had,
boys.
They had common discussion.
The boys were soccer mad.
Yeah.
And Stoke City was their team, which of course was Jeff's team.
Yeah.
And Jeff used to come and take Stephen on a Saturday afternoon
to the game.
Wow. And then they'd come back and he'd stop and I'd cook dinner. I'd have dinner ready for when they came back from the match. And so that's where it started. And yes,
the girls? His girls?
His daughter.
His daughter.
His daughter.
She stayed with you as well?
No.
Okay.
No. Denise got married when she was 17.
Oh, young.
Very young. And but Jeffrey came out a lot with us when we went out together. But of course Denise then was a little family on her own.
Yeah, yeah. And then you decided to follow Jeff to Australia as he got his job to Australian Fine China.
Well, that was an amazing story because he got a job that he didn't even apply for.
Sure.
Yeah, so God's hand was all in that.
How did you adjust to Australia?
How did I adjust to Australia? I think quite well, really, because Jeff said to me, don't start comparing. Once you get to Australia, don't compare Australia with England.
Yes. And look, that's a good lesson because I got that lesson when I went on my first mission trip. He said, Natanael, don't compare. If you compare, you're not going to enjoy this.
No.
Just take it as it comes.
Yes.
And then you immerse yourself in the new experience and you enjoy it.
Yes.
Beautiful lesson.
Yes. But when we had the news that Jeff had got this job at Bristol Fine China, excuse me, I just said, I had got elderly parents. Jeff's parents were dead. So he'd got no parents.
So his dad passed away as well.
I'd got two parents still alive.
Yes.
And both of them not really well.
Yes.
My father had got Parkinson's disease and my mother had got heart trouble.
Yeah.
And I just said, and because I had always been the one that used to go up to see them and make sure they were okay.
Yeah.
And I used to go and do shopping for Mum.
Yes.
Because they were in the 70s, as we are now. And
a lot healthier though.
Yes, we are a lot healthier than what they were. And so I just said to Jeff, what are we going to say to my mum and dad?
Yes.
What are we going to tell them? What do we say? And then I just said, if either of them say to us, oh, I'll never see you again, I said, I'm not going. I said, but if they say something like, well, we've had our life, you've got yours.
Go for it.
Still in front of you, then don't think about us. Then I said, I'll know that that's what the Lord wants.
Yeah.
Anyway, we went up to tell them. We only had a few hours to make our mind up whether or not he was going to take this job. So we went straight up to see my parents and we told them. My mother was in bed at that time. She was confined to bed at that time. And we saw my father first in the living room and we told him. And his words were, Carole, Jeff, this is a new opportunity for you two to start a new life away from your ex-partners.
Wise man.
And then we went in to see my mum. And she was in bed, and told her what had happened and that Jeff had been offered this job. And she said exactly the same thing. She said, Carole, she said, what an opportunity. Don't think about us. You think about yourselves.
Yeah.
And I'll come and see you. I said, that's all I wanted to hear you say. I said, I shall hold you to that.
Yeah.
That you will come and see us.
Yes.
And they did.
Mm.
So Jeff said yes to the job.
Yeah.
He came out first.
Yeah.
I was left to sell the family home
Mm.
and the cars and everything else and pack up, and then I came about 5 weeks later to join him with Stephen.
Yeah.
We had hoped that Jeff's son would be able to come with us, but Jeff's ex-wife would not let him come.
Mm.
So it was just the three of us, Jeff and myself and Stephen, who came.
Mm.
And then about 9 months later, my parents came out.
Oh,
and
that's beautiful.
They had 9 weeks with us.
Beautiful.
And it was wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
What a beautiful
So they
story.
saw that we were okay.
Yeah. Just gave them that peace.
Settled. That's right. That settled their mind, and
Yeah.
to know, yes. That
And
was
then you began your journey, obviously, in the ministry alongside Pastor Jeff
Yes.
in various roles.
Yes.
And you grew in those roles more and more.
Yes. Yes. As each year passed, it just seemed as though the Lord gave us more and more opportunities. We started off at the Uniting Church in Scarborough.
Yes.
And while we were there, we were asked to go out and do little trips to different congregations where out in the bush, like Southern Cross and Meriden and Darkin and places like that. Collie we went to.
Yeah.
And we used to take a little team with us.
Mm.
And the minister there gave us opportunities to go and to do some lay preaching.
Yeah. Wonderful.
And then, as Pastor Jeff has related to you, that when Churchlands started to get going, we finally left the Uniting Church and we joined Churchlands.
So Jeff was on staff, but you were doing voluntary work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But we left the United Church in, I think it was 87.
Yeah.
And it was in the early 90s that Jeff was asked to go on the staff
Yes.
of Churchlands. But during that period, from when we went to Churchlands, when we first started attending Churchlands, we actually became home group leaders.
Yeah.
And then eventually we became home group coordinators, and we had about 6 groups of leaders under us.
Yes.
And so we were mentoring
Leaders.
the leaders
Yes.
as they mentored
The church or the people.
the church,
Beautiful.
the church people. Yes.
That's amazing.
And so that's how we started. And then Jeff went on staff, and then he went to Tabor College, and then he began to preach at Churchlands and things. But then things change, as they always do.
Hmm.
And that was a Vineyard Church at the time, and we loved the Vineyard statement of faith.
Sure.
And
It's quite supernatural as well.
absolutely.
You managed to embrace all that coming from a traditional
yes, we
church?
did.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Tongues, prophecy, the whole
Yes.
lot, supernatural healings,
Yes.
miracles.
Yes, and we went to many seminars.
Yes.
In those years,
Mm.
and then it was. I suppose it was from when we were mentoring the leaders, etc. that maybe my role as pastor, as like pastoral care, began to come to the fore, and it was rising.
That would have been in the 50s, in your 50s.
Yes.
Isn't that amazing? And most people would, they wouldn't think that you can step in your calling in your 50s.
No, that's right.
To most people, it's like you discover your call when you're in your teenage years or 20s.
Yes.
Yet, in your case, it proves that it's never too late. In fact,
that's right.
I mean, your ministry blossomed both in Australia and overseas, in the 50s and in the 60s, and even now in the 70s.
Yes. And God's still opening doors.
You know what I've learned, Carole? I've learned that with God, it's never a full stop.
No.
It's always a comma.
That's right. Yes.
There's always another chapter. It just carries on. It just carries on and on.
That's right.
And even though people do give you a full stop,
yes,
in God's eyes, it's never a full stop.
No.
It's always an end.
No. That's
it's always
right.
an end. Not even a but.
No.
It's always an end.
That's right. Well, I think it was in 97, early part of 97, Churchland sent out a few groups to start churches.
Vineyard churches.
The vineyard churches. And we went to Ellenbrook, to a young couple who were pastoring the Ellenbrook Vineyard Church.
Okay.
And we went, we suddenly felt that we didn't fit in at Churchlands anymore. Things were changing.
In 97?
In the, yes.
So Ellenbrook just started then? Because
yes.
that whole area was brand new.
Yes. Yeah. And we stayed with them for 2 years.
Yeah.
And Jeff preached every other week.
Yes.
So because that pastor there was working full time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he gave him a break by ministering and with the word every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And we just supported them over a 2-year break.
Yeah.
And plus the fact that we were still actually running a home group from Churchlands by ourselves.
Yeah.
So
which
in
you
between
still do
that,
now.
Which we still do now. But that was a different group.
Of course.
And one day I suppose it didn't just come one day. I guess we were feeling for quite some time that God wanted us to start our own church. And so we prayed about it. We got our home group that was at the time to pray with us and into this, and whether or not it was God's purpose and plan for us to do this. And it was the end of 1999. Yeah. It was November 1999.
Yeah.
And we approached the vineyard, and the pastor who we'd been helping got in touch with the vineyard and said that we wanted to start a vineyard.
Yeah.
In Duncraig, no, actually in Woodvale.
Yes.
And we started by ourselves. We started in our lounge room.
As you do.
The beginning of November 1999. And we were only there for 3 weeks. Yeah. And we couldn't fit everybody in.
Praise God.
We started with about 12 people.
Yes.
And the word grew. And as I say, 3 weeks, and I had to go and start looking for somewhere for us to join. And we found a little daycare centre not far from where we lived. And we were there for 2 years. And then again, we outgrew that. And then we moved to Duncraig. And then that's where we started. And we became Living Water Vineyard Church.
Nice. Beautiful. That had its own journey.
Yes, yes.
Wonderful.
And it was full on because we were both working
What were you
in
doing?
the secular.
What were you doing in Australia?
I was assistant to the bursar at John Septimus Row School.
Yeah.
And then I left there and I went to Joondalup Baptist College, and I was again
Admin.
assistant to the bursar there. Yes.
Beautiful.
And that's where I finally retired from secular work.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then you journeyed back at Churchlands on as a volunteer in pastoral care.
Yes.
That's obviously when I met you and
Yes,
Jeff mainly,
that's right.
and I just
Yes.
loved the work
Yes.
that you've done,
Yes.
because in that time the church really needed somebody like
Yes.
you,
Yes.
and you were neat and organized and looking after the people.
But in that time when we just, in the first few years that we had our own church, as Pastor Jeff has mentioned to you, he was approached by an African student to go to Africa.
Yeah.
And then after that, we were actually approached by another member of the congregation who was South African, whose daughter was a missionary at missionary school in Johannesburg.
Yes.
And she went out to Mozambique
Yeah.
to an orphanage,
Mm-hmm.
and she was running an orphanage and a baby clinic
Beautiful.
out in Mozambique, and she asked if we could support her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so from our church we supported her
Mm-hmm.
for 12 or more years,
Wonderful.
and in between that time we actually went out
Mm-hmm.
to Mozambique,
Mm-hmm.
and we went and worked
Yes.
at the orphanage.
Yes.
We'd be ripping up carpet, we'd be painting walls, we'd
Yeah.
be doing plumbing, whatever needed to be done. We were out there working with them,
Beautiful.
and we did that. We did it actually for probably about 12 or 13 years.
On a regular basis.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Spending even 4 or 5 weeks at a time.
yes.
Yeah. Beautiful. As we're coming to the close of the show, I'm sure that there'll be a lot more that we could chat about, Carole. I just love your story. This is the question that I always ask people, what would you like to be remembered by? What's the legacy that you've built? What's the ripple effect that you want to have on people long term, way beyond this life?
I think for people to remember that I cared, that I cared about them, that I really do have a pastor's heart. And if I see anybody in need, I try and help.
Yeah.
I visit ladies in aged care,
Yes.
and I visit ladies in their homes as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
I've got one particular lady who I visit in her home. I see her every week, and she was a member of our congregation, but she's in her 90s now,
Yeah.
and she's virtually housebound. And so I go every week and I spend time with her, and I do things for her and whatever she wants.
And the
to do.
amazing thing is that you do this passionately. It's a passion to care.
Yes, it is a passion, because I'm passionate about serving Jesus.
Yeah.
And so that passion, the passion rubs off on being passionate about serving people.
Yeah.
Because when I'm serving people, I'm serving Jesus.
That's right. That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much. I love this. I love this because this inspires us. In a way, it makes us a bit guilty, but it's good, it stirs us up. Thank you so much for sharing your story at Kingdom Stories. Well,
Thank you.
What a beautiful story. What an inspiration to us all. As Carole was sharing, she really only stepped in her call in her 50s. And now in her 70s, she carries on with more passion and burning passion that she did when she first found out. It's never too late. Discover your call, discover your passion, and go for it. And answer the call of God on your life, because this world needs you. This world needs people like Carole, who just simply love passionately and care for people. And that love and that care came from a heart that was hurt before. she experienced forgiveness from God, and she could pass on that forgiveness, and that care that the Lord instilled in her heart comes to fruition in this part of her life. What a beautiful story, what a beautiful inspiration. And I hope that this propels you to step in your calling. And if you have a pastoral heart, if you have a caring heart, start doing the work one day at a time, one person at a time. Yes. And may the Lord help you. Thank you so much for sharing this content, for subscribing to our channel, and for giving us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and everywhere you're consuming this content. It's a privilege to bring you these stories, and I pray that the Lord blesses you with these, and we will see you here next time. I am Natanael, Costea.
Thank you for joining us on Kingdom Stories from Down Under. We'd love it if you would subscribe, rate, and share these stories with your wider community. And remember, every story is worth sharing, including yours.